Hi, guys, and welcome back to the That's Where I'm At podcast. Today I have Brooke. Brooke is a trauma healing coach, rapid transformational therapist, and an NLP practitioner. Brooke specializes in empowering survivors to rewrite their stories. Her personal path, a testament to overcoming indoctrination, abuse, and toxic bonds, ignites her profound insight and unshakable dedication. Welcome, Brooke.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
Yeah. Me too. I've been talking about spiritual abuse and just different things like that on the podcast. And when you reached out, I'm like, oh yeah, your background is this, and you have such an amazing story about it. And I've been watching your journey as you've been posting on social media, just talking about the things that you get to do now that you didn't get to do before. And so I just want to talk a little bit about your experience with with being in a church and experiencing what you might call abuse and then leaving that situation and what you're doing now. So, can you take us into what your upbringing was like? Were you always in a church environment? And tell if you want to say what kind of church it was, you don't have to, but if you want to talk about that, I don't know if you usually do talk about that, but it's up to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do talk about it honestly. I'm very outspoken about it now. I used to have a lot of shame about it, and I was kind of afraid to talk about it because when you leave religious systems like I did, there's a lot of fear around talking out and speaking out against really what happened to me and what's happening in that system. So I was actually born and raised into the religion Jehovah's Witnesses. So for anybody that's familiar with that, um, I'm a third generation witness. So, my grandparents were, my parents were, and so forth. So it was really much expected of me to be in this belief system. And when you're born into something like this, you don't really question it. You don't actually look outside of it because you're told not to. And
Right.
of course, I'm going to trust my parents, right? Of
Right.
course, I'm going to say, oh, my parents believe this. And so I'm meant to believe this. And I didn't question it.
And I'm
So
sure it was
that's the
just
really,
part of your life, right? So just part of your life. So I guess until you started getting more curious as you got older to be like, oh, there's other things, or why aren't we doing this, or why do they believe that? I would guess it's just normal part of life because I remember that growing up Catholic, it's just like this was my life. This is what we did.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So did you have that experience?
In some ways, I began to question certain things. There was beliefs that we had that I didn't really quite understand, and one of them in particular was the belief around holidays and birthday
Okay.
celebrations.
Okay.
I
Okay.
hated being different growing up because I wanted to be like a part of the crowd. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to belong, and not celebrating holidays and birthdays meant that I couldn't belong,
Yeah. Yeah. And
and that was really tough.
that's such a need that we have. And I'm sure
Mhm.
you saw your classmates or your friends having birthdays or birthday parties or being celebrated
Mhm.
in some way. And then as a child, it's hard. It's hard to reconcile that, that it did you ever feel what did you feel with that, or what did your parents tell you, and were you able to accept it? I just think it would be hard to just accept it, but that's me.
It was, we learned growing up that we couldn't do this, and if we did, we would be basically punished not only by our parents, but God would see everything that we were doing. And so
Okay.
I always thought I had like God looking down at me, watching everything that I was doing. And so there was
Yeah.
a lot of fear that came for me.
Yeah.
So even though there was some times where I would actually participate and have a cupcake as a little girl, instead of being thrown into the library and not getting to participate, I was like, you know what, I kind of want to do this thing and have fun like everybody else is. And so I would kind of go against what I was being taught. And that's when I began to kind of use deceit and lying, that because I really wanted to
Yeah.
be who I was. I wanted to express myself, and I was going against my parents, which ultimately always got me in trouble.
Right. Exactly. So tell me about your experience. How long were you in the church before you decided to make a change in your life? Or did you make the change?
Yeah, no, I was in until I was 36 years old. So from birth till I was 36 years old. So I've only really been out technically for about 8 years since I left.
Okay.
I left for multiple reasons. My then husband found out that there was a lot of child sex abuse
Mhm.
cases being covered up within this system.
Mhm.
And that made me start to doubt the belief system. That made me start to doubt the leaders. And that really made me kind of go down the rabbit hole of research
Mhm.
and discovering that I was in a cult. And I was like, you wouldn't think that Jehovah's Witnesses was a cult because they're all nice people, they're honest, they present themselves a certain way. But then I discovered that no, in fact, I was in a cult being controlled by men that claimed that they were from God and that we were the only true religion in the whole entire world.
Mhm.
And that started to make not make sense for me. And I started
Right.
to decide that, you know what, this no longer resonated for me.
Mhm. Were you in the
That's what I
spaces that
did.
you're doing now, like the coaching spaces? Had you done any work like that, to have any information to go, oh, I'm in a, because that happened to me, not necessarily coaching, but leaving my toxic marriage and understanding
Mm.
narcissistic abuse and, control, right? All those things, psychological abuse, and the way that churches also control in similar ways the way narcissists do, which I believe that high control religions are a breeding ground for narcissists. Um, I just then started putting the pieces together, going, oh, well, no wonder this happened. And I see that in the church I was in, that they did the same thing my husband was doing. So it was all very normal in my life. I don't know
Mm.
if you saw that.
You have that spot on. That is so true. I talk about this a lot, that being in a high control religion or a cult-like system is abusive. And so you only know abuse. So it's no wonder why you recreate the pattern in your relationship.
Yeah.
And so I often talk about the same instance of a trauma bonded, narcissistic, abusive relationship and also that trauma bond with God.
Mm-hmm.
They're one and the same. And some of the
Oh,
characteristics
yeah.
are conditional love and approval. So in an abusive relationship, right, you
Mm-hmm.
get the emotional roller coaster of great affection and then also cruelty, right? Right, where you're
Mm-hmm.
making the victim feel like they have to earn love
Yeah.
or earn love by their expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same way with the trauma bond with God, which means that, and often in these high control religions, you're taught that God's love is conditional on obedience, perfection, compliance with all of these strict rules.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you fail, you have guilt, you have shame, you have fear of
Right.
punishment.
Right.
And it's the same thing in these relationships. And so I started to see this dynamic because I also left an abusive marriage, which we've talked about before,
Mm-hmm.
at the same time I left the cult. So I started to see the similarities in the thread between both of these things.
Were you seeing these early on, or did your eyes get open, like in your 30s? I have a friend who joined a cult, and she can now see, like, okay, they started doing this, because it's so insidious, isn't it? It's so, like, it's that love bombing, and then, like you said, a little bit like there's that devaluing, and then here's a breadcrumb, and then, then they give you the love and all that. And I know with her experience, she had that. And I just think about my experience in the church as well, having that experience of like, oh my gosh, you're so great. That You're the greatest person who's ever walked in our church. And only you can do this thing and be this leader or whatever. And the minute they didn't need me anymore, it was like devalue and then really discard. So did you see that early on? And maybe you couldn't do anything about it or you couldn't go anywhere, or were you just stuck in that cycle?
I was definitely stuck in that cycle. When I was younger, I got disfellowshipped, which is another word for basically getting excommunicated out of the religion because
Okay.
I sinned. I sinned. And that means I was shamed. I was shunned. So no one could talk to me. I would go to the church, but literally nobody could pay attention to me or look at me in the face. And I
Oh.
had to serve like this, I like to call like a penance, right? Of being able to get forgiveness from God for a year. So here I was, 16 years old, trying to find myself, trying to come into my own, and being very, very alone. And I feel like that is the piece of where they kind of use this tactic of the discard, devalue you, right? To make you be like, you know what, you sinned, you were bad, you were wrong,
Mhm.
and now you're going to get this punishment. And it's the same way that an abusive relationship, like you talked
Yeah.
about it, right? Is that like they discard you, right? When they're done with you and they are like, well, you know what? You don't really serve my purpose anymore
Mhm.
or get me what I need. I'm now going to throw you away.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it felt like in that religion. And even when I left in 2017, I lost my entire community.
Ugh,
I was all alone. So I lost family that was still in the religion, and I lost all of my friendships that I thought were forever friends.
right.
But man, and I realized that it was so easy for them to discard me because the minute that I didn't fall in line with their belief system,
Hmm.
it didn't matter. They had no loyalty.
I see that too. That it's not
Mhm.
if it's not exactly how they would have done it, because a lot of people don't agree with me speaking out for with the abuse that I had. And then as I've been healing, I'm like, oh, I had that in the church too. You know what I mean? Like it's amazing what our brain does, right? When we leave that cycle of abuse and we start healing. So I started to see it all around me, and even in friendships, I was like, oh, there's a reason why I'm in certain friendships they're not valuable really. They're just I'm a little bit stuck in that same cycle where I have to perform a certain way or I have to be a certain way, and if I'm not that way, then it doesn't work. And it's really, to me, it's sad. That's definitely something that's been hard to reconcile because I have a lot of friends that I met at church, but the ones I still have are no are not really there anymore. They're
Mhm.
deconstructing as well, or they're trying to understand what happened as well. And it's a shame. How were your parents during that time? Like, were you, I mean, if you were excommunicated, are they allowed to talk to you?
So, no, they actually are not really
Oh,
technically allowed to talk to me. If I was disfellowshipped again,
yeah.
but more importantly, if you're an apostate. So that's what they call someone that's basically left the religion and then speaks
Oh,
out
okay.
against the religion.
Mm-hmm.
Which I always like to tell people, I'm not like angry or I'm not trying to speak out against religion. What I am trying to do is
Yeah.
empower people to see what kind of system they're in. Is it
Yes.
healthy or is it toxic?
Yeah.
And is it hurting you or is it helping you, right? And I
Mhm.
feel like anything that separates people and like calls it love is not love. That's
Right.
control. That's manipulation. That's using a system to keep you contained so that they can make money. I look back at my whole entire relationship with this religion, and I'm like, basically, they wanted you to do free labor to find more people to be part of the religion so
Okay.
they could make more money.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. And that was really all it was. So my point of speaking out now is one, I would love for my parents to wake up and see what they're
Yeah.
really involved in. But other than that, to help empower other people that are still kind of questioning and have seeds of doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Am I in a cult or is this a religion that's toxic? Is this actually real?
Right.
Is this actually the truth that I'm being told or is it a lie?
It's really hard, isn't it? Because like you said, you left when you left, you lost everything. And you
Mhm.
lost maybe a lot of friendships and a social place and all those kinds of things. And I think that people, I see that also when people are scared to leave their marriage. It's like, but
Mhm.
what are you doing right now? That do you want to live like this for the rest of your life? And so I think it's scary because it's scary to lose your your friends and things like that. But it's like there's the thing I love that you do is I know you're helping people understand that's like there's something better on the other side. And though that was really hard for me. I was really like really worried about all these people
Yeah.
I'm going to lose. I sat with my coach a few times going, so that's it. I don't have any friends anymore. This is it. And she's like, nope, the good ones are coming in, the bad ones are leaving. And it's sort of you just sort of adjust, your world, but that is kind of scary, I'm sure. Do you ever talk to people who are doing who are leaving something like that, or maybe making a huge life change? And how do you help them with that?
Honestly, I do. I actually work with a lot of clients that are still stuck in, particularly even in my religion, my old religion, or Jehovah's Witnesses, or other very strict, high control religions
Yeah.
that have kind of awakened to the fact that this is not the life for them. Something intuitively said, I no longer want to be here.
Yeah.
But deconstructing from that, and you're also right, coming out of a society that has also kept you isolated just like an
Mhm.
abuser does, right? They want to
Right.
isolate you, make you very dependent on them. These systems do the same thing. They make you very dependent on them. So that leaving sounds like you said, so much fear of the unknown. What am I going to do on the other side of this? Who's going to be my support system? And gain friends, right? And I think that's really the sad part of it because I have seen that and witnessed a lot of people that have left these systems
Hmm.
suffer from depression, high anxiety. There's a high suicide rate because people don't know what to do when they lose their identity and their belief system. And I felt the same way. And, I left a marriage and, a highly toxic marriage where I was extremely trauma bonded. It felt like I was coming off of a drug when I
Yeah.
left that marriage. You may
Yeah.
even resonate with something
Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And it's the same way leaving that system because you're like, who's going to support me? What am I going to do all alone in this world?
Hmm.
And I really don't know how I navigated. I wish I could say to people there was times where I felt like I did have like a genuine nervous breakdown because
Hmm.
it is extremely hard to go through this type of process. But this is why I help people to see that there is life on the other side,
Yeah.
that you can create community, you can find friends and people that turn into family, even if you lose your family.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the biggest piece of this is helping people to know that there is something on the other side of this and you're not alone. You can get the support for someone that's been through it to help you guide you through this process.
Yeah. I'm curious to know if you had a hard time separating church and maybe even like say church people, church friends from God. Um,
Mm,
I that's one of the things, like I still have a relationship with God and I'll say, I love you. I don't like your people very much right now. And so it's kind of a hard thing to, because if you're being taught, but we're being taught by people, right? So if we're being taught
yeah.
that God is conditional and you got to do X, Y, and Z to earn his love, and then when you kind of get out of that and deconstruct, that's what I'm calling it anyway. That's what I feel like I've been doing is deconstructing and realizing, oh, okay, I need to focus just on God because that I know my relationship with him. Because it was the people who were saying, well, no, you have to do this, this, and this for you to be good enough to be
Yeah.
whatever in the church or whatever. Did you find that? Did you have to unravel that?
Oh, there was a lot of unraveling for sure. I think um, at first I was angry. I like to say that leaving these type of systems is kind of like going through a grief cycle.
Yeah.
You first are in kind of shock and denial, right? And you're
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm experiencing. I can't believe I've been betrayed. I've been duped. So you're kind of going through this. How does this even, nothing makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you go through the anger stage, right? Where you're angry maybe at the people, like you just said, where you're angry at
Mhm.
like these people, they betrayed me and they're lying to me and all of these things. And then you also go through maybe the angry stage at God. I know I did.
Yeah.
And then also going through the grief of the loss of the community, the grief of the loss of the belief system, and realizing that it no longer resonates with you.
Yeah.
And knowing that this is just part of the process
Hmm.
and being able to then, I think the discovery process is the fun part, where
Yeah.
you get to be curious now, right? Like for you, this belief system no longer resonates, or this church no longer resonates for you.
Yeah.
So now you get to go and be curious, and you get to go and discover what actually feels good to you, what resonates for you, what community feels
Right.
healthy and true, and where you can be your authentic self, and you're not going to have guilt, shame, fear, or be told what you have to do, right? And that's where you kind of get the freedom to be
Yes.
able to be who you are and have a real connection with a higher power.
Yes. I love it because I've always been very open to like talking to other people, other religions, even if I'm not interested in joining them. But I just love to hear other people's point of view. And so that's sort of what I've been doing. As I've been unraveling is like, who am I? What do I really believe? And I'm seeing that. And where do I want to be? And this is the biggest thing, having left the church I did, and then leaving my abusive marriage, it's like I need somewhere to be safe, and I'm not to that place yet. Like I don't feel been to church a couple of times, not
Yeah.
that church, but a couple of times, and I'm like, nope, still don't feel safe here. I feel like I hear certain words or certain phrases being said that are like, those are red flags, people, and I can't be that person.
Go.
And yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard to unravel, but I know it, I love that idea of now we get to be curious, right? And get to do what we want to do and figure out. And we don't even have to know what that is yet. Like we're just figuring it out, right? Walking along.
Totally, exactly. And I think that's the beauty of the discovery process and the beauty of the journey. And I always like to say, I'm not against people that feel like they need a church to be able to feel sense of community or social connection. I think
Right.
healthy communities do exist, and those are great for people. But I also do come from the belief that we can have that connection right here, right now, with
Yeah.
that higher power, that connection to our energy, the what we believe in, and that connection to source, to be able to have that experience of
Hmm.
knowing that you are safe and you can have this connection and you don't need it from anybody else, and nobody else needs to
Yes.
tell you how to get that. You have it right now, right here. And that's what I truly believe in now, after going through a very deep awakening process,
Yeah.
and finding that connection myself.
Yeah. And that's so good because I think when the ego of man gets in the way, because believe the pastor's supposed to be bringing his congregation closer to God or whatever, teaching us things, right? But when the ego of man gets in the way and they are gaslighting you or manipulating you from the pulpit, um,
Mhm.
that's hard. Now I didn't have this with the church, but in my abusive marriage, I actually, because I believe in the Holy Spirit as a Christian, I actually in my head did not know who I was hearing, and I think I was hearing my ex-husband. And so that's been part of my unraveling journey is like I'd like to hear a higher power rather than rather than my ex-husband. And I know that this has been common in some narcissist groups I'm in. They're like, "Are you guys feeling like you can hear God?" And I'm like, "Yes, finally." It's like I can actually hear him. Did you have that in any way? And do you feel like it was, I have almost feel like it was also the church too. It's like, no, I can't do that because the church would not like it or they wouldn't agree with it or, I don't know. Did you ever have anything like that?
Like feeling the connection, hearing from a higher power. Is that what you're kind
Yeah.
of
And then,
asking?
but kind of mixing it up with like, is this the higher power or is this like leftover or is this the pastor or, whatever? Is this the rules that I'm hearing rather than like a real connection to a
Mhm.
higher power?
Totally, completely. I think that I was disconnected from that my entire existence within that cult-like system. So I love that you're bringing this up. In 2020, actually, my ex-husband and the father of my children died.
Oh,
And that actually created a spiritual awakening for me,
mm,
because having no belief system, having wondering, I kind of had chalked it up to, I guess it's just science, there is no higher power. I really had become so angry and cynical that
yeah.
I couldn't even experience that. And when he passed, it was tragic. It was a lot of grief. I didn't realize how much it was going to affect me, even though we had had such a tumultuous relationship. I
Hmm.
had known him since I was a young girl, and he had been a part of my life for a really long time, obviously having children with him. And then I saw my children grieve. I wanted to know, okay, what is this existence? I need to know what reality I'm even living in.
Yeah.
And as I became more curious, and asking questions, I necessarily wasn't praying, but I was asking whatever was there to please help me receive the answers that I'm needing because I am suffering. I am struggling to want to stay on this planet right now because I don't understand my existence.
Mhm.
And so the more that I asked, the more I started to like kind of receive answers. People told me, go and watch the Netflix series. It's about near-death experiences. I can't remember what it's called right now.
Oh,
It's
okay.
escape. And I started watching that, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. All of these people have had kind of the same experience of the near-death
Mhm.
experience and having, this other feeling or sense or presence and all of these things. And I was like, okay, well, so maybe there's something more to this. And then eventually I said, you know what? If this is true and this is a real thing, I want to hear someone's near-death experience, like from their own mouth
Mhm.
in my own space, and I want to hear it. So 2 days later, I had a client at the time, I was in the beauty industry. A client came to me and she was on my bed. We were doing the procedure and she started to tell me her near-death experience. I did not ask for this. She
Wow.
just randomly told me her experience. And she's going into this. I'm like, tears are streaming down my face because I'm like, did this just really happen right now? Like, did I actually receive the answer in the prayer that I really had been throwing out into the universe? And that's exactly what it was. And in that moment, I felt the connection. It felt like love. I don't know how to explain it other than that. It was just
Mhm.
there. I knew it was there. I could feel it. It was palpable. And I knew that I was finally kind of on my path of this awakening journey. And ever since then, I have become more and more in tune with this, I like to say consciousness or higher power or the ability to connect, and receive those messages that I'm needing for my life's journey.
That's amazing. I love that you got that answer. I just
I
love
did,
it.
yeah. I mean, I think I said it in such earnesty and such desperation.
Yeah,
It was like I could not be answered. And
right.
I know sometimes people are like, well, you know what? God's not answering me, or I'm not hearing from this higher power that you speak of. And I
Mm.
always like to say, I at times also have been like, okay, well, where is this thing? When is it going to happen? I've been really needing this to happen, or I need this, and I want everybody to know that like this, sometimes you get your answer and maybe it's not in the way that you want,
Yeah.
right? Maybe it's not in the way that you expect, but maybe it's what's for your best. Maybe it's what's for your actual journey
Mhm.
here. And it's just, you have to kind of be able to come into acceptance.
Mhm.
Because I definitely did not want to accept that I was raised in a cult. I was in an abusive marriage. I was like, well, why did I survive all these things? Why did I have to suffer like this?
Mhm.
Um, and then in my whole entire awakening journey, I realized that it was here to teach me something. It was here to teach me about myself,
Mhm.
just like that abusive relationship, right? What did it teach me? Well, it taught me that I didn't love myself, right? It
Yes.
taught me that I needed to learn how to love myself and to accept and know myself,
Mhm.
to not sacrifice for someone else and make them comfortable and make me miserable, right? Like it taught me so much. And when you can change your perspective and look at everything from a different lens, that I'm not the victim. This was actually a gift. And sometimes it doesn't feel like a gift,
Right.
but it is on the other side of it. You can look at it as a gift. What is this always teaching me? And so you don't think that life is happening to you. You think, oh, life is happening for me.
Yeah.
And you really change your whole entire mindset when you do that.
That really resonates with me. While I don't want to go through 33 years again of abuse,
Mhm.
you know,
No.
I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be and I'm doing the work I'm supposed to be doing because the thing I talk about a lot with people who are on the other side or coming out and they're trying to figure out because I work with women in midlife and many of them are like, is it too late for me? Like, is this it? Is my life over? Because you were making a plan with somebody, right? You were making a plan for a future with somebody, and then whatever happens, things happen. And so that was hard for me. I was like, now what? You know what I mean? It's like, so now that's what I just encourage people. It's like, oh, well, now you get to, like we were talking about, be curious and you get to, it's not too late because you're not dead. So you're not done. You get to keep going. But eh, that was so still in like my belly that I had to help women, that I always knew I was going to help women somehow, didn't know I was going to be doing this, didn't know I was going to be talking about abuse all the live long day, but it's so where I want to be. And it's amazing what we can do, right? We turn our pain into purpose.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what you do, right? And I think on some level, we kind of choose that path and we want to do it because it feels good to us and we're being of service and we're taking what really, really where we suffered and helping people come out of it themselves. And I think that's where the empowerment comes in.
Yes.
And so instead of us feeling powerless, right, we're back in our power
Hmm.
because that's what abusive relationships take away from us. We feel like we're powerless. That's
Yeah.
what cults do. They take away your power and you think that you have no power or you have no intuition or you don't even have the ability to make your own decisions, that God
Hmm.
makes them for you, the leaders make them for
Hmm.
you. And
Hmm.
that's just not true. And that's why I think that's the important part of both of our journeys is using our voice. And that's what we're doing right now.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
Um, what was I going to ask you? Now I don't remember, so they can cut this part out. I guess I don't remember what it was. So tell
Oh,
me
good.
about how you got into coaching and who you work with. Because I know for me, I like this might be what I was thinking of. It's that building up that self-esteem, right? Validating that person's journey where they're at now, and then helping them dream again and build that self-esteem and the boundaries. That was the biggest thing because I didn't have any boundaries. I didn't know what boundaries were. And so in society, I think as women, we're taught wrong, right? We got to be the good girl, like you were saying, right? Be the good girl and like put everybody else first, and do the quote unquote right thing. And if you do the right thing, then everything goes the way it's supposed to go. But I see for me, all that showed me was everybody else has to come first. I stifled myself, so I was an angry person. I was super angry all the time at life, and now I know it's because I had no boundaries and everybody took advantage of me. And that,
Mhm.
and that was my way, my body's way of reacting. And so learning healthy boundaries was such a game changer for me. But I've only done that in the last few years because I really didn't even know. But now I do, and so now I can help other people, to understand what's going on. What kind of people are you working with, and how are you helping them on their journey?
Yeah, for sure. My work is really holistic. I always say it's mind, body, spirit because you can't just, you can't just work through the mind. I found that in my own journey. Traditional talk therapy was great, but I was continuing to get stuck.
Okay.
So I was like still in my patterns. I was still not really moving through my triggers. Like the stuff was still happening, but yet I wasn't really being able to move out of those because I had severe complex PTSD. And so the why I work with the women that I do is because narcissistic abuse, one, causes complex PTSD.
Yep.
So when we get back in with relationship, we're going to get triggered a million times because there's going to be a lack of trust because we've had betrayal. There's going to be a lack of sense of self because we've really been brought down. Our sense self-esteem has been continually pummeled. There's a lot of components to this. And so I always tell everybody the work that I do starts from childhood. We go back into childhood as a trauma informed coach, really going back in there with the work that I do, which is rapid transformational therapy.
Hmm.
And that's hypnosis to work with the subconscious mind because it remembers everything that ever happened to you, all your experiences, your negative core beliefs. We go in there and we discover these and get to the root cause because what you're struggling with now in life always comes from childhood.
Yeah.
There is a sense of, there's a belief system, there's experiences that you had in childhood. And so healing the past really helps us to embrace and empower ourselves now so that we can live a more present life and our brain's not taking us all the time in the past when we're triggered of like, oh my gosh, this feels like this is happening. Like when you said something that like felt you were at the church or something and somebody said
Mhm.
something and it triggered you, you're like, this sounds like my ex-husband.
Yeah.
Well, because it felt like it, right? Your body, your mind, it remembered, oh my gosh, I remember exactly that moment when I felt like this, when he said this. And we have those imprints from the past. And so we have to heal. And so that's the type of work that I do with women is creating a new sense of foundation because it was rocky before, right? It was chaotic,
Mhm.
it was traumatic, and now it's about creating this new sense of foundation so that you have a completely different personality that's empowered and has self-esteem, and she knows that she's enough. She
Yeah.
knows she's enough, and really it's healing the nervous system because living in fight or flight all your life because you're walking on eggshells has created a nervous system that is out of regulation. It's
Mhm.
dysregulated all the time. So
Yeah.
you're feeling like you're constantly you have anxiety or you're constantly on the go or you can't be still, you can't sit with yourself. Like there's so many components to this that is really important to kind of look at it in a full spectrum way.
I love the hypnosis part. I That was one of the game changers for me, doing that. And then I don't know about you. I'm sure it's the same for you, but let me know. That was like I was kind of, am I allowed to do hypnosis? Because that was that leftover baggage from the church, right? It's something holistic, but anything that wasn't from God, like prayer, like just prayer, like go deal with this in prayer time at the altar. Like that was the only thing that was really taught to me. And so now I'm
Mhm.
just like, no, I went through abuse for 33 years. And then I'm thinking, and then in the church and everything else, you know what I mean? It's like I need tools in my tool belt to help me. And so I've done so many different holistic things that I loved doing hypnosis and really being able to talk to little Laura and heal
Mhm.
her and talk to her and because it's true. I don't know if he's a doctor. I think he is. Dr. Gabor Mate was talking about that. He's like he was being interviewed and he said, "Is everything
Yeah.
from childhood?" He goes, "Yes." It's
Yes,
like
it is.
and
Yes,
those
it is.
it's
Yeah.
like just go deal with it. And this is the thing is if you've
Mhm.
never done it before, it sounds like it would be so scary, but it's not. It's so to me it was so to me it was so good to like be able to like heal that part of my childhood that I didn't know was really hurting because now I know that little Laura needed to be talked to a little bit and loved on a little
Mhm.
bit. So it was really good. I highly recommend it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it is very empowering. And I do a lot of inner child work because on myself and with my clients, because inner child work has profoundly changed my life.
Yeah.
Because I grew up, and a lot of women carry this belief. Actually, 99.9% of the women I work with carry this belief of I am not enough. And so we are chasing love, acceptance over and over and over again, either through people, achieving, or other means. So we're just trying to do it. So even if we have like an addiction to shopping, it's because on some level, a subconscious level, we believe that we are not enough. We don't have enough, so we'll just go buy enough and that'll
Yes.
make us feel better.
Right.
Right. And so there's this belief system, but when we work with our inner child and we find out all of the beliefs that this little Laura or little Brooke carried, and then we just process them, we heal them, we love them, where it's like you're another person. You're changing your entire belief system. You're changing the core of your identity, your personality, of who you show up as. I mean, if you would have asked me 7 years ago to come and talk on a podcast and be in person, you would have, there is no way. I had a
Mm.
mentor tell me, and she's like, "Oh, yeah, you're going to be speaking, you're going to be doing all these things." And I was like, "Oh, hell no, I'm not going to be doing
Right.
that. You're crazy."
Right.
Because I had a fear of being seen. I had a
Mm.
deep fear that I wasn't enough, that I couldn't be seen.
Yeah.
And then you can change all of that, right? You can change all of that. And that's the beauty of it, right? You can change that through hypnosis because your subconscious holds on to those beliefs. But there's another way to empower yourself. So, yeah, I love talking about that stuff. I could talk about that forever. So, I'll be
Right.
quiet now.
And this is what I always tell people. It's like some of those voices in your head of you not being enough or ugly or
Mhm.
fat or whatever, they might not even be your voice or who gave you that, hey, you're too fat or whatever, right? And they handed you that. And I really had to unravel that and go, oh yeah, because like the culture I grew up in, my mom was always on a diet, and so that was always something that I
Mhm.
had a conversation about. So even to this day, I have to like stop that voice and go, oh no, I'm good. Like I'm in menopause. I had 3 children. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I am good enough the way I am. And I love myself the way I am. But that's taken a lot of work and standing in the mirror and talking to myself in the mirror, which I know some people don't want to do. They won't even look at themselves. It's taken so much work and I love it because I don't want to go into the next part of my life and be miserable and not like myself. Because there's plenty of
Yeah.
people in this world who tell you what a terrible person you are. If you really want to know it, don't go looking for that because you're going to find it. So I love it. I love that you're helping people do that. And because it's such a ripple effect, isn't it? To when you're changing the life of one person, how it ripples out into their
Yeah.
community and the world. It's so
Honestly, it
gratifying.
really is. I love that you say that because it is a ripple effect. So every time it's like I work with a client, not only do I learn something new about myself, but I'm able to also witness and sit in their sadness with them, sit in their grief, sit in the rawness and vulnerability of another human being. And so it's really a beautiful experience, to be honest. And knowing that you can change a life like
Yeah.
that is really beautiful, right? But I always tell people, I'm not a healer. I don't call myself that. I feel like that's not a term. I can't heal you. You are your
Yeah.
best healer. You are your best
Yeah.
guide. Yeah. I like to just say, I'm just the person that has a flashlight, is kind of just guiding the way a little bit for you to kind of help you see the forest through the trees that you may not be able to see, right? Because we can't always see everything when we're in our stuff. So sometimes we need someone that has a third party perspective that kind of can look up above and see, oh, okay, well, this is probably why you're struggling with this because of this belief, or this behavior that you're doing is because of this belief. And just being able to help kind of guide you. But ultimately, you are the one that's going to heal yourself. You are the one that, just like you said, you're doing mirror work, right? You're the one that's going to sit and look in the mirror and tell yourself every day, I love you. You're enough. You're beautiful. You are
Mhm.
perfect the way that you are. You're going to be the one that does those things.
Yes. I love that. And that's a perfect place to end because because I so agree with that. I love that you can
Yeah.
be the guide to take us through that healing. I just love that so much. Oh my gosh. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing your story and giving people an amazing resource to help them on their journey. Where can everyone find you?
They can find me at my website, lifecoachinggoddess.com. And obviously, I'm on all the socials. So I'm sure you'll put those links in there and they can find me and reach
Yes,
out to me, have a consultation, have a chat, or just reach out and ask me a question. A lot of people do that because they want to know something. And I'm more than happy to reply and let you know what my feedback is.
that's awesome. Thank you so much. Yes, we'll put everything in the show notes. And of course, everybody go reach out to Brooke and start your healing journey because that's really important. The ripple effect that we'll feel in the world is really astounding. So, Brooke, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.